Hello and welcome. Today I'm joined by Tony Faulkner, who is MD and co-founder at VSI Executive Education. Tony, how are you doing?
I'm well, Andy. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Yeah, it's a beautiful day in Manchester, so that always helps. It's rare that I'm really hot, but I'm actually too hot in a shirt today. So
it is a nice day. Yeah, I've just been out doing a bit of training and just got back to join you on the webinar. But yeah, it's rare that we get days like this in Manchester. So if you can, make the most of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, just talking about where you're based then. So where are you based now?
So I'm a Manchester lad originally. The business VSI is a Manchester-based business. So we have offices in central Manchester and also in Winslow.
Very good. So whereabouts in Manchester are you from originally?
Originally, back in the day, I was brought up in Wythenshawe, which provides a certain grounding for those that know Wythenshawe and are from Wythenshawe. Moved out of Wythenshawe with my family when I was about 10, I think, and moved to a place called Heel Green, which is by the airport. And then I now live in Bramhall, which is South Manchester. So stayed in and around the area, but obviously with work, moved to different places around the country and also worked quite a lot abroad.
Very good. My brother lives right near the David Lloyd, so that's sort of Cheadle, Heel Green area.
I know it well.
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, good part of the world. So in terms of moving into this side of things, like when you were at school, did you have an idea that you wanted to go into the line of work that you do now?
No, absolutely not. School for me was a social event. I love going to school, but I love going to school purely to be with friends, purely to play football back in those days. School wasn't an academic journey. It wasn't something that I was interested in at all. But I really enjoyed my time there. But from the age of 10, I think it was, I signed at Manchester City Football Club. It was always my intention, my desire to be a footballer. So throughout the whole of my schooling days, my focus was primarily on my training and my development as a young footballer. School came second to the opportunity that I had to become a professional footballer. And then when I left school, I became an apprentice with Man City.
So what was that like then? So growing up, you're obviously a good player. How competitive was it? And was there, like, from City versus United, I guess that would have been a period when United were really sort of on the up.
Competitive, yeah. It was, from my perspective, we would train every Tuesday and Thursday with the club. We would then play on a Sunday, if I remember correctly. We would potentially also play on a Saturday. That might be with your school team, or you may get called into one of the other squads at City as you got a little bit older and played on a Saturday as well. So it was competitive. It was about winning and losing. It was about being as good as you could be. It was about getting as fit and as technically proficient as you could potentially be. And you were aware of that at the age of 10, 11, 12. And I always remember on Saturday evenings, my parents would always have friends around, but come and they would have kids and they would bring their kids with them as well that were same age as me. But come 8 o'clock at night on a Saturday, I used to lock myself in the bedroom. I'd had my tea, my bag was packed, my boots were clean, my shin pads were ready, etc., etc. And that was about me preparing for the game on a Sunday. So from a very early age, I understood the discipline that was required to give you the opportunity to potentially become a professional footballer.
Yeah, that's quite impressive at that age then. So was that just something that you identified yourself, that you'd seen other people that weren't doing that? So how did that come about, do you think?
I don't know is the honest answer. We're going back some years now. As I say, it was a very competitive environment. So you were aware that you had to be in a position where you were at the top of your game. And of course, you had off days, you had bad days, but you had to discipline yourself and prepare correctly. And without doing that, then that would impact your training. It would impact your ability to perform. physically, emotionally, mentally. So somewhere along the lines, that was either drilled into me whilst we were developing as young footballers, or maybe it was part of my upbringing that I'd got from my parents. I'm not too sure, if I'm completely honest. But ultimately, I've always believed in disciplining yourself with regards to whatever it is you want to achieve. And I had that from a very young age. And I used to get the mickey taken out of me by my friends. You're boring, you're going to bed at 8 o'clock at night. And maybe that was the case, but there was a solid purpose and there was a solid foundation that I was working towards. And without doing that, I wouldn't have had the opportunity that was in front of me.
And so how long were you at City for then?
So at City till I was 17. I then went to play for Bristol City, which obviously 200 miles down the road, which was a life experience because I left home. I lived in what they called digs back in the day. So 1 minute I was at home, the following day I was living in a house just around the corner from the Bristol City's ground, Ashton Gate, with a host family, a little old lady and a little gentleman who were the host family. Lovely people, but obviously a very different world to what I was used to. I remember turning up at the house, the lady answering the door saying, "Are you Tony?" "Yes." "Here's your room." Showed me through to my bedroom. Said, "You see through the window here, you can see over the top of the houses, the ground, the roof to the stand, to the stadium. That's where you are. 5 minutes to get there, and ask for the manager when you turn up." And literally that's what I did. So completely different to the, let's call it the concierge service that most footballers get nowadays. But this, of course, was back in 1991, 92, I think. So there was a lot of positives that came out of that. It definitely provides you with a great deal of resilience. It definitely puts you in a position where you have to learn, and you have to learn quickly. It creates a certain amount of psychological toughness, and I don't look back on it with any unhelpfulness or any aspects of that wasn't a good period of my life. It was tough, and it didn't particularly go the way I would have liked it to have gone. But I do believe that it provided me with a certain kind of steadiness to my character, my personality, which has helped later on in life.
And so at this point, have you pretty much written off GCSEs then? Have you gone through that, or what happened?
Yeah, so I hand on heart, I can't tell you what my GCSEs were. I couldn't even tell you what I did. I'm assuming I did your traditional English, science, etc., geography, but I couldn't even tell you what my grades were. I attended them. I completed them, but as I say, my grades, they're probably out there in the ether somewhere. So education was secondary to me. It was all about being a professional footballer. So GCSEs were something that I had to do. I did them, but it was never something that gave me a great deal of importance. And it was also the environment I was in at the time. It was dispelled to some extent. It was something that wasn't given any great importance because you're going to be a footballer. Now we all know that that's probably not the right way to go about it, because as happened with me, you get injured, you then can never play football again, and where do you go from there? What have you got to fall back on? So when I did get injured, I had to go back to college and gain my A levels, which was a journey in itself, because, as I say, school was a necessary evil to some extent. But then I had to go to college to get A levels to then go on to university.
So was that after Bristol then, or how did that transition happen?
Yeah, so I got a back injury, which 2 years down the line after receiving the back injury, I had about 3 operations on my back. I was informed through the surgeon that I could no longer play professional football on medical grounds. So that was me done as a footballer. So, you know, I often say I managed to play 12 games. So I got a taste of it. It's what I always wanted to do. Would I have gone on and had a long career? Who knows? It's not an issue to me anymore. It's, you know, it was a long time ago. So at that point, I was going to say thrown out. I wasn't thrown out. That wasn't the case. That journey of my life came to an end. The Professional Footballers Association, who are the union for footballers, they provide you with a level of support, and they supported me tremendously. You receive some money, some compensation money. Mine was minimal because I'd only played a handful of games. Someone obviously that has had a long-standing career gets a lot more money. But the little bit of money I got enabled me to enjoy myself probably for about 8 months, and I had a couple of conversations with the PFA with regards to what do you want to do next? There's this opportunity, there's that opportunity. I didn't know, if I'm honest, Andy. I'd only ever wanted to play football. And I suppose it took me about 8 months, 8 months to a year to feel sorry for myself, to blame the world, to put weight on because I'd always been physically fit as a footballer, to be a bit down in the dumps, and to go through that, what I call a grieving process, before something triggered me to say, right, what are you going to do now, and how are you going to go about it? Which at the time was an article in the newspaper with a guy called Norman Whiteside. Norman, well-known player for Manchester United. He retired at the same time as me, but was about 6-7 years older than me. Me and Norman had come across each other briefly whilst we were playing. So I saw an article in the paper with Norman going to Stockport College and taking his A-levels in order to then hopefully go on to university and become a physiotherapist. So I thought to myself, well, if it's good enough for Norman, who's played for a big club, won medals, played in the World Cup and so on and so forth, then who am I to turn around and say this isn't appropriate for me? So I rang Norman. Norman said, come down to college tomorrow and we'll go and see the college. I can't recall who we actually saw. So I did, and the day after I'd enrolled on a course, a 2-year part-time course to complete some A-levels, which would then potentially get me into university to train to be a physio.
Right. Do you remember which A-levels you did to do that then?
I knew you were going to ask that. One was biology, and one was a hybrid of a science A-level. Again, this is back in 93, 94, something like that. But we did that for 2 years at Stockport. And then from then, I then went to university to do my degree in physiotherapy.
So just a kind of an off-kilter one, but for someone who's in like education now, what are your thoughts on like the school system? Like I've always been, when we've been recruiting people, it's always been, right, they've got to have a degree. But I'm more and more coming round to the fact that conventional schooling is really good for some people. But for me, I probably didn't really enjoy GCSEs or A-levels, or possibly even the degree to some extent, because it's, well, that's the conveyor belt that you're on. Whereas I think like learning in a working, a real life environment is actually, you learn a lot more skills in that way for certain people. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you look at the traditional university structures as they stand today, particularly in the UK, and you know, a lot of these degrees that are out there in the marketplace are very theoretical, academic. The question is always, do they provide you with a knowledge base that you can then apply into a skill set so that you are better positioned to navigate your way through that organization, whatever industry you're in? Over the last couple of years, we've seen, you know, the apprenticeship model coming back now. And a lot of the people that we speak to in our industry now are looking to move more into that type of educational environment. So, you know, moving into an apprenticeship scheme with a business that offers you real world work alongside, you know, an academic training program. And very much like you've said, a lot of education is there to enable you to pass an exam or to pass a test, to retain a certain amount of knowledge where you can answer questions. How does that transfer into you being impactful in a role in the real world is questionable. Do we teach, you know, IQ, EQ? So we've got emotional intelligence, which is critical in the workplace. How do you deal with stressful situations? How do you deal with things that go wrong? They go wrong constantly, don't they, on a day-to-day basis? So I think there's this conversation around, is the education system fit for purpose, has been around for a long time. I've not seen a great deal of change to it over the years. But from my perspective, as a parent, as a father, when I go in and see and speak to the teachers at parents' evening, which we haven't had now for 3 years, because of the world we're living in, my questions to the teachers, I'm less interested in whether he scored 10 out of 15 in his spelling test. I'm more interested in his character. I'm more interested in, how does he respond when something doesn't go right? How does he respond if the teacher tells him off about something? How does he respond if he's excluded in his peer group? That they're the types of things that I'm interested in as a parent, because they're the types of things that are real world and are really going to impact his ability to perform whichever industry he goes into when he leaves school.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. It's like, even again, for me, my age, you know, I'm 43 now, and it's like the courses that you run, there's so much you can learn all the time. And I love hearing sound bites. This is how we started talking originally, wasn't it? It's sort of, how do you develop yourself and investing in yourself and things. And it's difficult. Like at school, you are on I was very immature at that age. And at what point, if it wasn't for my parents, I wouldn't have probably done university. But that's enabled me to get to here. But you may have had a more successful route, whatever you define that as. So
yeah.
It is an interesting one, and there probably isn't an answer. Like, my parents are both teachers, and yes, it is an interesting to figure out what is the best way of doing it. But yeah, we're not going to solve it on this call anyway.
We're not, no, that's for sure.
So yeah, getting back to you then. So you'd done your A levels then, and at that point, were you pretty set on being a physio?
No, I wasn't. The PFA, Professional Footballers Association, gave me the opportunity to do my A levels and then go to university to train to be a physio, which would, in their view, get me back into the world of football that I'd came from. And whilst it appealed to me, I think it appealed to me really because it was the easy route. It didn't really challenge me. It didn't really give me you know, options other than just go back into what you've been doing. That's what you know, that's where you'll be safe, that's where you'll be comfortable. The thought of being a physiotherapist didn't appeal to me. I didn't want to be rubbing footballers' legs for the rest of my life. It just didn't work for me. But going back to me as a person, and me being someone that, once I've decided this is what I want to do or I want to achieve, I discipline myself to be as good as I can be at that. It might not be good enough, but it's as good as I can be. So I then made my mind up, well, okay, if I'm going to commit to college for 2 years, what does that lead to? That then leads to potentially going to university. University then was 4 years part-time. So we're talking like a 6-year journey here. I'm already 21. Would I have been about 21? So I'm going to be 27 by the time I'm finished. You know, I've got to earn money. I need a job. I need a career, so on and so forth. So the plan was As soon as I've finished college and I then go back I hopefully go into university, which was the case. I completed my A levels, and then I got offered a place at Salford University to do the physiotherapy degree. I got in touch with Man City, obviously where I'd played, and I said, look, I'm now training to be a physiotherapist. Is there the opportunity to come in and get some work experience? So a bit similar to the apprenticeship model that we've just discussed. They said, yeah, great, come in. So from day one of being at university, I then went back to City in a part-time role. I took on the role of a coach analyst and also as the physio for the youth team on match days. So whilst I was training at university, I was sitting in that role with the club. As the years went on, as I got into kind of years 2 and 3, I started picking up more work within the club, within the youth structure, working with the teams as a physiotherapist. And at that point, I think I was just on the treadmill. I think it was just a case of I was developing my knowledge. So I wanted to develop more knowledge. Again, I wanted to be as good as I could be. I'll discipline myself in this field. And then come the end of the degree, I felt fortunate. The academy structure in English football was changing. So they'd gone from the youth system into what they called the academy system. This was in 1998, I think. And one of the criteria to be awarded academy status was to have a qualified physiotherapist. So they offered me the job. Now, as you're probably aware, it's not such a great decision to go straight from university into a role like that, potentially when you haven't done a stint in the NHS covering all the different remits of the role. I took the job at City, and that was an experience, because City at the time wasn't Manchester City of today. I literally took the job and went in on my first day, and there wasn't a room. There wasn't a treatment room available for me, and I literally mean there was not a treatment room. I didn't have a room. I didn't have a bed. I didn't have a plaster. Never mind strappings. Never mind machines and so on. I didn't have a thing. So for the first, I don't know, a couple of weeks, I was battling with the accounts department to say, okay, I need a budget of X to get a room with all the equipment in there. They just hadn't acknowledged that was what was required. They had to put it in place because it was one of the criteria for the academy system. So I got a tiny little room, one bed, one piece of treatment equipment, and I was filling the cupboards with any bandage, tubey grip, strapping I could get my hands on. And I'd sat in that role for 2 years, and at that time in the game, particularly in the academy structure, I was working 7 days a week and probably 5 nights a week, and potentially even 6 nights a week. On a Saturday, if you play away at Spurs, by the time you get back, it's the middle of the night. There'd be players that were injured. I might have to give them a little bit of treatment and so on and so forth. I might not be leaving the ground until 11 o'clock on a Saturday night. Your girlfriend's out partying, your friends are out partying, etc., etc. And then I've got to get home and be back in the ground Sunday morning for 8 o'clock to treat the injured players. So I was doing this for 2 years. And during that period, again, on the treadmill, happy just to grind away, to learn as much as I can, to fight the battles that you come across, to take all that on board, to learn, to develop. But then at some point you think, hang on a minute, am I going to be working 7 days a week, 6 nights a week for the rest of my life? So I became acutely aware that the actual role of the physiotherapist was not for me. It didn't particularly enjoy it. And I got the opportunity to go to Blackburn Rovers, which was interesting because I'm a Manchester lad. I'm a City fan. I'm working at City. I then get the opportunity to go to Blackburn, which was 50 miles down the road. Not a club that I had any affinity to whatsoever. They were actually offering me £3,000 less as a salary. But they sold it to me in a way which was attractive to me, which gave me options and gave me a pathway to develop, because I knew I didn't want to be a physio. At that time, I was becoming very interested in people. So generally players, with regards to how they functioned, why players came to me when I didn't think they were particularly injured, the kind of support they needed emotionally when they'd fallen out with a coach or they'd had an issue at home, how it impacted their performance. So I was becoming interested in the psychology of people, found and decided that that was a direction I wanted to go down. So when I got the opportunity to join Blackburn, I positioned that to them, and they said, look, we can create a department here which is more performance based, and over the period of time you can oversee that. You can become head of that department. So I took them at face value. I took the role. So I was then driving 50 miles down the road every morning, leaving my house at about 5:30 in Manchester to get to Blackburn, and thought, let's see if we can make this work. They supported me going back to university again. So I went to, I studied neuroscience over in America, which was a blended program, some face-to-face and some online. And they supported that. And that was at a master's level. But it was very much an applied program. And that gave me a great deal of insight with regards to how people perform from a leadership, management and coaching perspective. And I started to take that level of understanding and apply it back into the role of managing the whole performance structure over at Blackburn Rovers. And I was there for 9 years, and had an enjoyable time in that role.
So when you look at the neuroscience, then was that something that was being done at that point, or because I can imagine sports science would have been pretty early on in its stage at that point?
Yeah, neuroscience not. So psychology, no. There was an expectation, I think, in them days that you either sunk or swim. You either had the skills or you didn't have the skills, and I quite quickly got to the point where I understood that some people do, but they don't know what those skills are and why they've got them. Some people haven't, but they've got a tremendous desire to want to develop them and learn them, so that they're better in the roles that they're in. So this whole aspect of psychology, the power of performance, how you integrate that into a performance structure within a sports organisation. This would have been 2003 was new, and it was an interesting point that got me to that place. We were going over to America with Blackburn, and was on a flight, and I'd picked up at the airport a book still on my shelf now, actually, called Winning by Clive Woodward, the England rugby union manager. And they had just won the World Cup. So this is 2003, 2004. And I read the whole book from front to back on this 8-hour flight to the States. And there was a chapter in there that Clive had devoted to an individual in Israel called Yehuda Shiner. And Yehuda Shiner was a business person that had developed basically a mind model that he'd worked with Israeli fighter pilots on. So, and they called it Teacup, think correctly under pressure. And this whole model was based on how individuals deal with pressurized situations in order to perform to their maximum. And this was a conversation that we were involved in a lot in football. That person can't deal with the pressure, this person can. So it was, well, okay, why can they? Why can't they? How do we develop the environment so we can start to develop these skill sets? So this chapter hit a note with me. I remember getting to I think it was Orlando where we flew into. I remember going straight to a phone box and calling this guy Yehuda Shiner. as we're in this lounge, and managed to speak to him and said, look, very interested, need to know more. This is why, this is what we're trying to do. And about 2 weeks after that, myself and a representative from Blackburn flew into Germany, it was actually, to meet him. And a week after that, we brought him back into the club, and he then ran a project with Blackburn for about 9 months, and I project managed it. So that very much got me into how the mind drives performance, people's characteristics, people's personalities, behaviours, how you can create environments that influence behaviours, challenge behaviours, and so on and so forth. And then that led me back to doing my neuroscience degree over in America.
Yeah, that's amazing then. So can you summarize, trying to summarize the whole teacup theory in 1 minute, but what were the main concept around it then?
So the main concepts start with self-awareness. So and everyone's different. So when you are in a situation where you start to feel out of control, so to give you an example, the brain's primary function is to maximize reward and minimize risk. So to give you an example, when you and I meet for the first time, if we were at your office now, we walk into the same room, we shake hands. Subconsciously, you might be looking at my shoes and thinking, they're an odd pair of shoes. What's he wearing these shoes for? Actually, they don't go with his shirt, and so on and so forth. And what it does is it puts you into a risk state in the brain. So you then start to feel a little bit more uncomfortable, a little bit more emotional, a little bit more irrational, maybe a little bit frustrated, so on and so forth. Whereas if we meet for the first time and for whatever reason we hit it off straight away, you go into a reward state within the brain, and at that point you feel controlled, calculated, relaxed, confident, so on and so forth. And depending on what state of mind you're in, provides you with the better opportunity to be able to think aligned to what you're trying to achieve. And it's all to do with the hormones and the chemicals in the brain that are being released constantly all the time, depending on the experiences that you're having. So these scenarios, these situations that we all go through, they're not specific to one group of people or the other. They happen to all of us. Race, age, gender, they happen to all of us. Some people are better at dealing with it than others. For those that are not that accustomed to dealing with it, once you can provide them with that level of knowledge around what's going on within the mind and then how it floods the body, once they've got that level of understanding, they've got an awareness of what's happening. At that point, you can then start to provide them with certain techniques that they can use so that they're not driven by emotion. They're driven by what we call the prefrontal cortex of the brain, which allows them to think and behave in a manner which is more appropriate to the situation that they're in.
That's a couple of points on that then. So, because I definitely like all of this topic area. So would that be sort of like a gut instinct? If I meet you, there's a few things that you may just think, actually, there's something a bit off here. I don't feel comfortable in this environment. Is that got association with gut instinct then?
It can do, yeah. There's been quite a lot of research which has shown that you have neural fibers which are in the gut. So what that means is that they pick up a sensation which then travels all the way back up to the brain to say respond, react in this way due to the chemicals that are released. So yes, gut instinct is sometimes used as an explanation for the situation that you've been in, although the gut instinct part of it is I can't quite put my finger on why I felt that way or why I knew that. The reality is that it will relate back to an experience that you've had previously, which left quite a strong emotional reaction within you. It's just at that point in time you can't recall what it is.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating, all of that area, because I was looking at when we were interviewing people, and I was always giving the advice: the first conversation, do it on the phone, don't do a Teams call, don't do it in person even, because you instinctively you do judge someone, don't you, straight
Yeah,
away when you meet them.
yeah, you do. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's a good thing to do?
Yeah, I've never heard that communicated to me in that way before. So the rationale behind that is, by doing it on a call, removes the that kind of instinct of judging someone when you meet face to face based on what they look like, similar to what we're talking about.
Yeah, so yeah, I think it's trying to not rule someone out as soon as
Yeah,
you look at them and think, all right, you just don't even listen to what they're saying, because
yeah,
you've already decided that you think that they don't dress maybe the way that you'd like
yeah,
them to dress, or they're whatever it may be, not
yeah,
shaved or something.
yeah.
I don't know what it may be, but you should be
Yeah.
concentrating on what they're saying rather than what they've done.
Well, yeah. I mean, we are. I use the analogy. We don't all breathe the same psychological oxygen. We're different. So what we often do, where we can often fall foul, is we view the world through our lens, don't we? So we tend to be attracted to people that are similar to us. So yeah, you may come across someone who doesn't dress like you say, has got a. I remember in football, we always used to have an academy director who was very, very, very old-fashioned, and he would always say everyone's got to have the same haircut, like the army, as an example. We had a goalkeeper who was a white guy, actually from Hungary, but he had a big afro, and he was a character. He was an individual, but the head coach wanted him to shave all his hair off. He thought it was wrong for him to have a haircut like this, and we said, well, why? This is who the person is. Let's understand who he is, and then we will understand all the positive skills and characteristics that he can bring with him, which are going to enhance him, but also going to add value to the team. But people, when they see a difference in someone, something that isn't the same as them, it often creates a level of fear internally, because, well, that's not what I think. Why do they think that and I don't think that? They've got knowledge that I don't have. Does that make me inferior to that particular individual? So the point around the telephone call as opposed to meet might have some relevance. I mean, nowadays, when organizations are recruiting people, they do a lot of blind recruitment, don't they? So you'll send your CV in, it doesn't have gender on there, it doesn't have age on there, it's just a CV with where they've worked, what they've done.
Yeah,
Maybe,
no, yeah, we've had that recently, where you don't know how old they are, like when
yeah,
they've joined. I guess it makes sense. It's just you're kind of not always used to it, because you've always had that information on there. And then just in regards to football, like you hear a lot of people, certainly like Roy Keane's always talking about there's no characters. He's talking about Man United, but in general, like when I think back to, say, people that come through in our era, there probably were more characters, whatever that means again. Like, what are your thoughts in terms of that? Is that being coached out of them because they didn't go through, say, what you did from that early age?
it's just different now. You couldn't, in the world we live in today, you couldn't bring that environment into the modern world. It just wouldn't work. At the same time, you can't take the environment that we live in today backwards 40 years ago. It wouldn't work. For me, it's always trying to find a balance between the two, and understand that everything that went on 20, 30, 40 years ago, not everything was bad. That there was a lot of good things in that, and likewise, everything that goes on today is neither all great or all bad, and we've got to find a balance. We've got to find a blend, and marry that together so that we can get what's appropriate for today and for the future. So yeah, what there's no characters in the game. It's different. a character of today in football is very different from a character of yesteryear in football, and I think they're to some extent they're both appropriate for the times that they are playing in.
Yeah, like you say, it can't all be wrong now. That you kind of think they're just not the same, are they? It's just different personality types.
You look at, I look at my son. The other weekend we had some friends round. We're all sat in the garden. They've got their kids here. We've got our kids here, and we're having that conversation. Look at them, and we're saying as mid 40-year-olds, we're saying that they wouldn't last 5 minutes in our day. Climbing trees, falling out, cutting the legs, just getting up, getting on with it, so on and so forth. And it's probably true, they wouldn't if that's how it was. But at the same time, the kids then came over and they're showing us how to do, I think I'm very computer literate, and IT literate with all the modern tools and apps that are out there, but they're coming along and they're showing me how to use my iPhone so much quicker and better. I'm thinking, wow, okay, brilliant. So, a caveman that I was back in the the 1980s wouldn't probably operate and function well in the modern era. So, but at the same time, I remember being a young teenager and my dad saying to me, you wouldn't have lasted 5 minutes, in my world. So I just think it's evolution. It's about understanding the best bits from all the different eras and trying to marry all that together so that you can get the best for today.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then when you were moving into doing all this with Blackburn, then did the management, did they all buy into what you were doing? Management, medical team?
Yeah, they we got complete buy-in from the club with regards to the project with Yehuda. Yehuda was with us for the best part of 2 years, so they were great. Blackburn was a real good club to work for at the time. A great managing director who was very supportive of the role that you played, the direction that you wanted to go in. And it was good times, but like most things, it has a finite point. And after 9 years, I felt that I needed a change. I needed to re-stimulate, and we, for probably about the latter 3 or 4 years at Blackburn, at the end of every season, so come the end of May, myself and a colleague from Blackburn used to go over to America. We'd spend 3-4 weeks over in America. We'd be delivering some workshops to universities, to sports organisations out there, and it got to a point where there was an opportunity to potentially move out there and work in that environment. So in 2008, 2009, I made the decision that my time was up at Blackburn and time to jump. So I resigned with the hope of setting up VSI, which is what we're doing today.
So how was that transition then? So you didn't have anything officially set up when you actually resigned from Blackburn?
I had a few kind of under the table conversations with people. We'll do this, we'll do that, we'll bring you over here. Nothing really came off. And what was interesting was after 9 years, 3 or 4 years of working at City, 9 years of working at Blackburn, creating a great network in the industry, both here and abroad, having that badge of the Premier League on your shoulder, which is very powerful around the world. After about a month of leaving Blackburn, the phone stopped ringing because you're no longer current. Doesn't matter what you've done, you're no longer current. And that was quite a scary time, because I suppose I thought that I was more valuable than actually I was. So it took around about 6-7 months from leaving Blackburn until I managed to secure work. And what that was I set up a business over in America with two individuals out there. And what we were doing was we were working with a couple of the big sports universities where we built a psychological profile tool. So we were going into these teams and we were profiling the athletes, and then we were providing them with a psychosocial development plan that fell off the back of that. And that was for the individual to work on, and also for the coaches in those organizations to start to implement into their training practices. So I did that for 2 years, based over in Boston. I was traveling backwards and forwards, working generally along the East Coast with some good brands out there. And then in 2010, 2011, Man City came back onto me and said, look, we know what you've done at Blackburn, interested in what you're doing now, psychosocial profiling of players. We'd like you to come in and deliver what they call the life skills program within the club, which initially was for players. And I said, well, look, I'm interested in having a conversation, but the program can't just be for players. It's got to be for players and staff. So anyway, that was all agreed. And I went back into City then in a performance manager role for 3 years, where we were introducing concepts of neuroscience into the development programs of players, but also into the development programs of the staff. And it was whilst I was in that role, started to take an interest into the role of the sporting director, not just in football, but in sport on a global level. So I managed to go and visit high-performing organisations in sport all around the world. Spent some time with the All Blacks, which was fascinating. Went over to the NBA and the NFL over in America. Interestingly, went to Google and Apple in Silicon Valley, which was very, very interesting with regards to how they operate. And did your traditional Barcelona, Juventus, spent quite a bit of time at Juventus, Bayern Munich type trips in the UK, as well as the RFU and GB cycling in here. And off the back of that, then had an idea to design and deliver a program for sporting directors, and we wanted to deliver it at master's level, so it had an international recognition globally all over the world. And at the time in 2012, there was only one other program which was being delivered by the Italian Football Federation for sporting directors, and that was just a 12-week program. So we, when I say we, myself and I brought two partners in to the idea. We set up a business, VSI, and we said, right, let's go and deliver this program. So we went to a university and said, here's the research behind the rationale. Here's the market. Here's the people that want to join the program. Here's the content. All we want you to do is put an accreditation to it as the university and teach, but at the same time we're going to bring in industry experts that will be part of the delivery of the program. So we kicked off in 2014, the world's first master's degree in sporting directorship. Due to the contacts we had within the industry, we had I think we had 30 people on the program. We had some high profile individuals, and we had brands, Man United, Liverpool, the ECB, the English Cricket Board. We had Olympians, we had sports agents. We had a high profile cohort of individuals that joined the course. And off the back of that, we got a lot of interest from media. And they were asking questions such as, why are these guys doing the program? What's it leading to? So all of a sudden there was an energy in the marketplace, and people were coming to us saying, I want to do this program. This is a direction I want to move in. We were quite strong on working with industry so that we could get clarity on what the role was. so that we were all speaking the same language, so that there was a consistency across all the clubs and all the sports with regards to the role of the sporting director. So, you know, you look at a physiotherapist, you might be a physio at Halifax Town or a physio at Arsenal. The principles of the role is the same. The context will often will differ, obviously, because you're working for two very different organisations. So we felt that the role of the sporting director should have a consistency, wherever you are, whether you were in football, rugby league, cricket, the principles behind that role should be the same. So programme started, went really well. That led to delivering a second programme in 2014, second programme in 2015, and as we are today in 2022, we've got the programme still running in the UK. We've got a programme that now runs over in America in partnership with Inter Miami FC, so that's delivered the North American and CONCACAF region of sport. And we are just in the process of about to go live with an online version of the programme, which has come about through market demand. So that will kick off in the beginning of next year. And we also run a programme which is called the VSI Chief Executive programme. So we get people joining us that are looking to move into those C-suite roles in sport. We've had owners of programs do that. We've had managers. We've had athletes that are in that transition period. We've had CEOs themselves, and COOs, and so on and so forth. So we have those two programs that run alongside each other. But now we've got a global reach, and actually in December we go live with a summit over in Dubai, which will take place during the World Cup. Taking place in Qatar to launch the global online program.
It sounds amazing. It does sound amazing. So in terms of, like, if you've got, say, people on the current course, if you've got, say, a CEO, a COO, which, albeit their top jobs, they're quite different in terms of, say, vision making versus operational. Like, how do you help them with achieve what they need to do in their role, or physio, whoever it may be? How do you help them actually go in the direction that they need to go?
Well, to start off with, we are strong on recruitment. So the individuals that come to us, we will have a discovery call with them, potentially 2, 3, 4 discovery calls with them, so that we've got a good feel for who they are, for what they've achieved to date, and the direction that they're looking to go in. Also, so that they've got a very good understanding of who we are and what we're looking to achieve. Once we're comfortable with them, they're comfortable with us, we take it to a board where we then ask to bring them forward for an interview. They'll then go through that interview process. And on successful completion of that, they'll obviously get offered a place on the programme. At that point, so let's just use the sporting directors programme. We may have 25, 30 people on the programme. Generally, most programmes are around about 70% populated with people from football, and then the rest is other sports or from businesses associated with the world of sport. They've all got one common denominator, which is they're all looking to improve. They all want to be a better leader within an executive function. So that's critical. Lead at an executive level, not a head of department, but lead at an executive level. So they've all got that in mind. They're all hungry to learn more, because some people are already in that role, or some people are already operating at that level. So they've all got the desire to learn more. They've all got the desire to challenge what they know, because as many people will tell us, just because they're in that role, they've got there for multiple different reasons. And it's not always because they are the greatest or the smartest or they've had the best experiences. So it's about, okay, this is how I've got here. do I continue to do this to improve and to grow, or do I need to change, evolve, refine my knowledge and my skill set? And then the other reasons that they join is to grow their global network. So the people that join the program over the years have been from all over the world of sport. So we're able to now have a global network of individuals that have been through the program or who are on the program, which allows them to employ each other and create opportunities for each other. We've had groups go off and buy businesses together from the alumni group. So once we are comfortable that each individual has got the ability to both support the rest of the group and also challenge the rest of the group, high support, high challenge, we get growth. Then we're comfortable that the journey that they're going to go on, with all the different experiences in the room, with the facilitation that they're going to get through the course, but also through the global network that they're going to be exposed to, whilst we will guide them with regards to our experiences and the experience of the program aligned to their direction, they find their way in that group because there's so much experience, there's so many opportunities. People within our network now are moving from role to role in all these senior roles in a lot of these global brands all over the world, and it's taken. We're 10 years in. It's probably taken a good 5-6 years before we really started to see those individuals being able to take up those roles and being able to leverage what's gone before them actually to have a greater impact in the industry.
And where is it based, the UK operation, like where the sessions run from?
So the UK operation is based out of the Etihad Stadium in Manchester. Central UK, really. We have people that come down from Scotland, people that come up from the south. So we have, I think it was last year, we were going to deliver it out of Wembley, but geographically it wasn't the best place. So we've always delivered it in Manchester. For the foreseeable future, we'll continue to deliver it here. The way the program operates, the face-to-face program, is because everyone is in work, everyone is in the industry or on the periphery of the industry. It's part-time. Each academic year, there are 7 blocks of 2 days when they come together. So they have 2 days in Manchester, then they have about a 5-week gap, 2 days, 5-week gap, 2 days. 7 blocks of those. Within the 5-week gap, you've got tutor support, you've got peer support, you've got online support. And they've got the ability to take what they've learned from those 2 days and all the support around them back into work, back into their current role, and start to apply these new techniques, these new experiences. They come back. Did that work? Yes, it did. It didn't work. What are we going to do? How can we alter it? So on and so forth. So it's very much the principle behind it is to give you a skill set. And that skill set has got to be appropriate for the world that we live in. So we've just recently gone live with a report on the role of the sporting director in lower league clubs. And off the back of that, we've identified around about 16 challenges that they're faced with on a day-to-day basis. And we've then allotted the skill set to each challenge that they must then develop in order to be competent and successful in that role. As we speak, we're in the midst of doing some research with chief executives in sport. So how those chief executives, what they understand about the role of the sporting director and where they believe or if they believe it needs to evolve and where it's going in the future. And again, that will then inform us with regards to what content needs to be delivered in the program, but critically, what skill set needs to be learnt, so that it can be developed in the workplace.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting. And sport is massively, it's been growing for a long time, and it certainly seems to be doing the same as well. And are you seeing similar things? That football's obviously a very dominant one in the UK, but probably worldwide as well. Are you seeing more growth in other areas as well?
Other sports?
Yeah.
No. is the honest answer, and which is disappointing. And I think football gets knocked quite a lot for various reasons, but I think a lot of the other sports also need to take instead of knocking potentially football, is take a long hard look at themselves and start to internalize maybe where they could improve and where they could get better. We want as many people as possible on the program from other sports. To give you an example, one of the programs, we had a table of 5. We had an entrepreneur in sport, we had an Olympian, we had a manager from football, we had an England rugby union player. And that conversation between those 5 was fascinating, because the entrepreneur thinks quickly, does things, fails, moves on. The Olympian that was then working back for a national governing body, by the time the entrepreneur had an idea, implemented it, failed, and started on his second idea, the Olympian hadn't even been able to arrange a meeting with the NGB to even discuss their first idea. So when you've got those types of people sat next to each other and they're being able to share those ideas, they learn and they bounce off each other. The entrepreneur needed a bit of what the NGB's got, and the NGB needs a hell of a lot of what the entrepreneur's got. So we want people on the program from other sports, but in our experience, a lot of the other sports are not. They'll use, and this is true, the issues of finance and resource in order to support their staff members. So I understand that is a barrier for them. But I also think there is a slightly different mindset with regards to, inspiring their staff to be as good as they can be, finding opportunities for them. A lot of organisations will come out with lines such as, what happens if we invest in them financially in the programme and then they leave? And I always go back to them and say, well, what happens if you don't invest in them and you stay?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And then in terms of like women's sport seems to be getting a lot more investment. Like we know some of the physios like Dave Fever, who you will have worked with, like Gary Lewin, they've gone into women's football. Is that a trend that you're seeing?
We've had quite a few women join the programme over the years that have come from football. We've had a few females from Olympic sports, very high profile females from Olympic sports that have done the programme. There's still a barrier somewhere, somehow. I'm not sure what that actually is. Again, we try to work with some of the female in sport organisations with regards to how we can position the programme for women's sport. They're not the easiest of conversations to have. For multiple reasons. There's always a kind of sometimes a challenge to getting females on the programme. The females that have been on the programme have been brilliant. They've been pioneers with regards to how they've viewed their career and the opportunities ahead. They're brave as well. Brave for the purposes of 90%, 95% of the individuals that have probably done the programme are male. But we find that in the recruitment process, the people that apply for the programme are male. And we don't get many females that apply. We have to chase them, or we have to go to them. But we are seeing an uptake. We are seeing an uptake in that, and one would assume that as more investment comes into women's sport, women's football, and if women's football does grow and become kind of mainstream and starts actually making money, then there will be more of a need and more of an interest for those positions within the women's game. I mean, we one of the things that we are doing in September, I think it is starting to do some research into the role of the sporting director in women's football, because there are a couple of people that sit in that role, not a lot, but a couple. So we need to highlight that and bring that to the fore a little bit more to understand, one, how that role can add value to the business of women's football, because ultimately that's what it is, and that's what it's got to grow into to be sustainable.
Yeah, sounds really exciting. So yeah, we've gone over the hour, but I appreciate your sharing your time and the experience. It really is a fascinating journey, and I find all of that area really interesting. And I've only had great feedback from the people that have come on your courses, of people that, you know, I really respect and so on. So I can see why it's been so successful. So yeah, well done with that. I hope the new ventures online and in America go well. And yeah, I'm always keen to hear about how it's going. So thanks for your time, and I hope to catch up soon.
Appreciate your time, Andy. Thanks very much, and good speaking to you.
Likewise. Cheers, Tony.
Bye.